Hey, welcome to Bluejay Banter, sponsored by Equitable Bank. We take banking personally, West Pacific Dental Group, and Infusion Brewery. Tim Kruger, Ross Ferrarini, Zach Weaver, our producer. Who you got tonight in these first games, Ross? Got some big conference championships here.
Yep. Furman money line and Louisiana money line. Although South Alabama has really taken me to the woodshed the past few days. I keep expecting them to regress shooting the basketball, and they haven't. And I think Louisiana is the team to make them finally do so in the title game.
How about the Youngstown game?
That one was hard. I like Youngstown. I'm in a conference tournament pool, and I picked Youngstown. I like some. I've watched them a few times this year. I like some of the things that they do. But if there's anything I have learned, and I have watched a very considerable amount of low major and mid major tournaments over the past 4 or 5 days, there have been a lot of upsets and a lot of, I guess, I don't know if it's just the nature of the one and done, the pressure getting to a lot of higher seeds.
Well,
But
Eastern Washington was the biggest shocker so far.
I watched that game. I
They
watched the last
rolled through undefeated.
10 minutes of that game last night. They missed a couple of huge free throws, and they ended up losing at the buzzer. But Longwood got taken to the woodshed by Campbell.
Yeah, Campbell almost won yesterday.
There's been some crazy, and that's the other thing too about these tournaments. There have been some really crazy comebacks. I mean, Campbell was up 66-52 yesterday with about 7 minutes left, and end up losing, and almost end up not covering. Asheville missed a couple of free throws late to have even allow Campbell to cover 4.5. But
Well,
yeah, there's been some crazy games in some of these smaller tournaments.
I know people make fun of the WCC, but I mean, really, if you're the Big Sky, I don't know why you've got Eastern Washington playing a 9 seed, and if
Who
you
makes
should
fun
have.
of the WCC?
Oh, a lot of people do that. They say, "Oh, look how stupid this is." They just string it along. Well, yeah, I mean, and now
You're talking about giving the top seeds
right,
all the
right,
way to the
yeah, and now it's like a point they don't have to do that. They wouldn't have to do that. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
but some of these other conferences, I think, should do it. Like,
Oh, I agree.
there's no reason Oral Roberts should play the 8 seed. I mean, they've proven they're way better than everybody else.
I'm totally with you. I could not agree more. There's been some good games. Another one last night I watched a good amount of. You're a Minnesota guy once upon a time, and St. Thomas, they were getting outplayed and losing all game to Western Illinois, and Western Illinois could not score for the life of them the last 10 or so minutes of the game. And this freshman kid who's had a really good year for St. Thomas, kid from Milwaukee, I think his name is Andrew Rode, I think is his name, just completely took over at the end of the game. And Western Illinois ended up not covering the 4.5 after being up basically 6-12 all game. So
Hello, everybody, and we're going to have Brad Wachtel on here in just a second. He is one of the premier bracketologists in the country, and not only that, he just knows a ton about hoops, and especially based in the Northeast, he knows a ton about the Big East. And we're going to bring him on to talk about Creighton and the Big East tournament. And so, without further ado, there he is, Mr. Brad. How you doing, Brad?
How you doing, Tim? Good to see you
Yeah, I
again.
just want to say, first of all, 15 hours. What were you sleeping for 6 of it? What's the deal there?
I was off, wasn't I?
Yeah, a little bit. I was like, wow, it was a little
I
longer.
think I think you lose track after a little bit.
Went way quicker than last year, though. Ross Ferrini, my partner, former Blue Jay. How you
How you
Brad,
doing,
doing?
Ross? Nice to meet you.
good to have
All
you
right.
on.
Appreciate it.
Um, Too bad you can't see Zach. He's got the Chris Webber timeout Final Four hat on, vintage. There it is. Look at
There
that.
it
Look
is.
at that. Look at that.
Nice, nice. I like it.
Okay, so Brad was part of our mock selection group that we spent a lot of time talking about a lot of teams, and we spent a lot of time with I think every Big East team that's in the field. And so I guess we'll first, since this is a Creighton show, we'll kind of do it Creighton centric. So, what is your opinion of Creighton and where they sit and where they should sit and so forth, Brad?
Sure. Yeah. So in terms of Creighton, I currently have them as a 6 seed in the NCAA tournament. I think as you look at their resume, obviously with the Ryan Kalkbrenner injury earlier in the season, lost a few games. I think when you really look at their resume, their predictive metrics are very strong, but their result-based metrics are not quite where they probably should be. I think they're definitely a better team than what their actual resume might show. And I think part of that is because they don't have that upper echelon win away from home. Obviously beating UConn and Xavier, Providence, Arkansas on a neutral court is a solid win, but Arkansas is kind of a 8-9 middle of the pack team. They don't have that upper tier win that can really get them that much higher than where they are as a current 6 seed for me.
Brad, when you look at a team like Creighton's resume, and at a year like this where the dominant teams have been pretty few and far between. I mean, obviously a team like a UCLA or Houston have probably been the cream of the crop there. Alabama, what some would say, Purdue's fallen off a little bit, but Purdue's up there too. I mean, do obviously the seeding part, but from just watching the teams and looking at statistics and different analytics that you look at, because to me, I don't see much of a difference, quite honestly, between a lot of teams on the 5 and the 6 line, or the 7 line, even all the way up to, and some of the teams on the 1 and 2 line.
Yeah, no question. And I think Creighton has that potential to make a deep run in the tournament. I think they have the potential to win the Big East tournament. Just as good of a chance as Marquette does, or any other team at the top of the league, whether it's UConn or Xavier. A lot of people at the beginning of the season felt like Creighton was a potential Final Four team. So I think the problem is, and like I said, with seeding purposes, they just didn't accumulate those key wins to really give them a nice jolt. And it's
Right.
unfortunate when the Kalkbrenner injury happened early in the season. It kind of like put them to a halt. But they're going to be a team that's going to be underseeded. So I would imagine there'll be quite a few people that'll have them, and if they are a 6 seed or a 5 seed, wherever that might be, that they could be would not shock anybody if they get at least to the Sweet 16.
Yeah. Ross, I got to tell you, Coach Lou watched a good chunk of our Friday night bracket show because we talked about Creighton. So I'm texting with him, and I gave a little speech, and I said, "So what'd you think of my speech, Lou?" And he goes, "It was fair." And I go, "I'm going to wear that as a badge of honor, Lou. Thanks."
Because you basically just said they don't have a, kind of what Brad said, that they don't have a
Yeah, it was. I was trying
big
to put a
upper
little
tier
flour
win.
on it, but not much. But speaking of Creighton and potentially winning the Big East, I know in our chat we kind of like opened some eyes that Xavier came out with the news that Fremantle's out for the season. That kind of
Yeah,
opens the door slightly for Creighton if they get by the first game. Xavier's not the same without him.
no question, no question. And if I'm picking my bracket, I like Creighton to reach the finals, to play UConn. I mean, that's my championship game right there. And that would be an awesome finals. the only problem with that, as you know, it's the Big East, and UConn is going to have that place packed. So it's going to be essentially like a road game. Doesn't mean Creighton can't win, but I would love to see that.
Yeah.
UConn is currently the betting favorite to win the Big East. I mean, I'd be curious how many other leagues have
Got a 5 seed.
their 4 seed or 5 seed as the betting favorite to win the tournament.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when it comes to spreads and all that, a lot of it is the predictive metrics that are used, and UConn is 4 in Ken Palm, but Creighton is 12. Creighton is currently right ahead of Marquette, who's 13. So technically Creighton they should be the second favorite or the favorite to get to the championship game. I'm not sure what the odds say, but it should be pretty darn close.
Yeah. Just to let everybody know, I was as the Big East representative, I was the lone person who stuck up for Providence, and then I got egg on my face when they just absolutely laid an egg Saturday against Seton Hall, which obviously worked in Creighton's favor because it moved him up to a 3-line. Are you comfortable where our committee ended up with 11? I thought maybe we slid them a little too far.
I think we slid them a little too far. I have them as a 10 in my bracket. I'm comfortable with them being a 10 right now. They get UConn in the first round of the Big East tournament. I think they could, even with a win, I think they for me, they're kind of the back end of the 10. They could stabilize themselves, potentially even jump back into that 9 seed category. But just losing the way they lost, getting blown out at home against a non-tournament team like that right before the Big East tournament starts, that's not helping you. And with the way their resume is, they've had success at home. They've beat the top teams in the Big East at home. They don't have any success away from home, which is why they've always been limited with how far high they can get up. So yeah, I think they're in that 10-11 range right now, but I would lean more towards a 10 seed at the moment.
Yeah, I think though that I know you and 2 members of our committee, Brad and Rocco, they're very big on high quality road wins, which are big, but they did still have 3 high quality wins, and now because they beat Seton, it was something we talked about all weekend. Like, you have 3 wins, and let's say in the top 75, like Providence did, and then you get pounded by a team, and then they slip into the 75. So it makes your resume look actually slightly better, which is just, it's crazy. But yeah, I think that would be the big, that would be a neutral site. So then you could say, okay,
exactly,
and basically that's not quite a home game for UConn, but pretty darn close. So I mean that would be huge, and
that would be a significant victory for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. I think we talked a little bit about Marquette, but I don't remember your thoughts on Marquette.
Yeah, so I currently have Marquette as my second overall number 3 seed. They just win. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. They win basketball games. They won some non-conference games that were really strong, and including the blowout win over Baylor, who right now is probably a 2 seed, at worst a 3 seed. They've won some games on the road, including at Creighton that's a monumental win, because before that, you're looking at them and you're saying, okay, who's their best road win? It was probably Villanova or Seton Hall. But to beat one of those top tier teams on the road and obviously sweep Creighton, they beat UConn at home, they beat Xavier, they beat all the top teams. That's a really, really big deal for their resume. And, they have a number 8 strength of record overall, and 4 high quadrant 1 wins. They're just a solid 3 seed in my opinion right now. It's just going to be a tough matchup in the semifinals against probably UConn for them to win the Big East.
So Brad, I'm curious with a team like Marquette. If they're your second overall 3 seed, you're essentially saying that they're number 10 in the country, right?
Correct.
So, I've been curious about all kind of bracketologies that I've looked at over the past couple of weeks here. I've thought that Marquette should maybe be seated higher. So I'm curious, maybe these teams, I'm assuming you have I'm assuming you have Texas in front of them, Arizona in front of them, maybe Gonzaga or Baylor.
So I have Baylor in front of them, and I have Kansas State in front of them.
Okay. Okay. What is it about some of a few of those teams that are above of them, maybe on the 2 seed line, that that have a better profile than Marquette?
Yeah. So in terms of Arizona, Arizona's 4-1 against high quadrant one opponents, which is the best record in the country. Which kind of like for a while they were pretty close to a 1 seed. That 4-1 record against Q1 and 8-2. I'm sorry, against high Q1 and 8-2 against Q1 is, for me, it's a big deal. They beat San Diego State on a neutral court, Creighton on a neutral court, Indiana. They beat Tennessee. They beat UCLA. They also have some road wins at USC and Arizona State. You know, Arizona State's a bubble team. USC is a solid win. But that record is significant for me. And then when you want to talk about the Baylor, Texas, and Kansas State being in the Big 12, it's just a different league. I mean, the Big 12 is the best league in the country. And while Marquette is playing really strong, that bottom half of the Big East is not particularly good. So while they do have 25 wins overall, a lot of their wins are against games they should win. Whereas you're in the Big 12, every game that they play, even if it's against the last place team, whether it's Oklahoma or Texas Tech, and you go there on the road, that's still considered a Q1 game. The league is just so strong where you can accumulate more losses. But with the number of wins that these teams have, like Texas is 6-5 against high quadrant one teams, with 11 Q1 wins and 15 Q1 and 2 wins. And even Baylor, you know, who Marquette beat, you know, it's a good point. You know, why isn't Marquette ahead of Baylor? They beat them. You know, the committee doesn't look at head to head. And Baylor also, you know, they have some strong wins. They beat UCLA on a neutral court, and UCLA hasn't lost in quite a long time. Beat Gonzaga on a neutral court. They beat Kansas, of course, at TCU. They just get so many more opportunities. And, you know, if they had a losing record against these teams, it's a different story. But to have a winning record against that strong of a schedule is the reason why they are slightly ahead of Marquette at the moment.
Yeah, and there's a little bit, Russ. There's a little bit of gap between Kansas State. I mean, that's kind of a gap, and then comes the next group, and it's pretty impressive that Marquette is ahead of that next group actually, because you have Gonzaga in there, obviously a Tennessee team that's, you know, injured and fading, and Virginia team that's fading, and so on and so forth. So, what do you think if Creighton won the Big East, Brad? Where do you think they could land?
So if they win the Big East, now of course it depends on who they're beating. So
Let's say they play it out just like you did. Yeah.
So we're assuming they're beating Villanova and Xavier. Obviously, that's who would be the preferred opponents in terms of being able to increase their seed line. Definitely think they could, if they win the Big East tournament, I can see them cracking into a 4 seed. I think it's possible. Just because Xavier, with the news coming out about Fremantle, you know, the committee is not gonna, just because you have an injury that they haven't had them really for quite some time, are obviously not as good. It's possible they can drop a seed line. You know, Virginia, who a lot of people are not particularly sold on, if they go down early in their ACC tournament, they could drop down. So I see a path for Creighton, and again, because of their predictive metrics, I think it could be a slight reach. One thing to keep in mind is the committee isn't moving anybody around come Saturday. So wherever they're at on Friday, if they're looks like they're heading to the championship game, you know, if they're on that 5 line, chances are they're going to stay there, but there are other variables that potentially could come in play.
Yeah, I think it all depends on when we go back to the reveal, they said there was a razor thin difference between Creighton and UConn and that next. Now, if they somewhat have them in the 5 slot already and close, then I think the championship game would make maybe a difference, especially if they played UConn, you know.
Sure.
But probably the winner would move in and the loser would be a 5. I don't know. It depends on where they have UConn now. Most people think UConn's a 4 or even a 3.
Exactly.
But we thought that in the reveal too. So
yeah, there's no question. I mean, I have Creighton as a 6 now. but they certainly can be a 5 seed at the moment. And if they are, yes, I think getting to a 4 seed is much more realistic. We shall see.
We got to be careful with this question, Ross, as you see the flag behind him. But so I haven't really one-on-one talked to you since the latest Rutgers letdown. I mean, here's what I'll give you my thought on it. If they just, to me, they have 3 strikes against them. If they had only had 2, I could probably look by, but they've got the non-conference strength of schedule, and we've seen it year after year after year after year. The committee is looking for a way to kick somebody out, and they go, "Oh, there it is. That's easy. That's easy. We've done this before. 300 non-conference. We can, push them to the side." They have that. They have. I'm not so big on it, but they're still out there. Those 3 bad losses. And then obviously the injury situation, and since the injury, they just haven't played well. I mean, they're probably of the teams with the injury situation, them and Tennessee, I guess, would be the 2 where you would say, wow, look at the decrease in productivity since the injury.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. I mean, they have a lot of negative. Rutgers has a lot of negative on their resume, a lot of things going against them. And, the things that you mentioned, as well as they're not a particularly great team away from home. They're just 4-8 away from home. Part of that is because they didn't play in a neutral site tournament, at the beginning of the season, but that's their fault. You're in charge of your schedule. So that hurts them. And like you mentioned, I tweeted about it, mentioning the eye test, and I know the eye test is not on the team sheet, but if you watch them play, they're just not, they just don't cut it. They don't cut it. And, they have that win over Purdue at the beginning of the season, which is a monumental win. If they didn't have that on their resume right now, they wouldn't be, it wouldn't even be
talking about them. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, losing to Minnesota and then to Northwestern at home and not looking the part, especially when the game was on, when there was only one other game really going on at the same time. The committee is getting ready to meet. They're watching that game. There's no doubt in my mind they're watching that game. So they have Michigan. They get Michigan in the first round. Now, Michigan is a team that's on the bubble, on the outside, looking in, going to have to win multiple games to get in. But, a win over Michigan for me, it doesn't do a whole lot. It is a quad 2 win. I lean towards them being okay. Definitely wouldn't call them a lock with a win. No question about it. A loss, however, and I've changed my tune, over the course of the last week or so. I think a loss, they're going to be out. Dropped to 18-14 overall. With the way they're playing with this current team, I just don't see it. I don't think they would deserve to be in. And it's unfortunate because a month ago people had Rutgers as a 6 seed. So they really took a nosedive, and we'll see if they can. They don't have a good history against Michigan either. They've only beaten them once over the course of the last few seasons, and Michigan is going to be playing for something as well. They know that if they can, they're going to need 2 wins to have a shot. If they could beat Rutgers and then Purdue, they'll definitely be in play. So it's going to be tough sledding.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, too, with Rutgers, if they lose that game, if anybody at all, Utah State, Arizona State, Oklahoma State, gives us something,
exactly,
they're going to get past. Yeah,
no question.
Absolutely. Brad, appreciate it so much. Thanks for all your work this weekend. Thanks for stopping in tonight and giving us that breakdown. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Good seeing you, Tim. Good seeing you, Ross. Brad. Take care.
All right. Have a good evening.
All right. Bye.
All right, Brad Wachtel. See, I told you, Ross, he'd be good.
Apologies if that was if you heard anything in my background. I was trying to pull up your bracket, Tim, on Stadium.
No,
ads just go nuts.
No worries. No, I told you he'd be good.
He was really good. Very good.
Yeah.
Very informative.
Yeah, he's great with it. He talks about anybody in the country. I mean, it's just great. I was I was wishing we had him on just a little longer. I wanted to talk. One thing that was brought up, not so much by him, but by somebody else on the thing, was like the intent to schedule, because like Rocco's a big mid-major guy and he works with scheduling, so he's always like, well, intent to schedule, and I'm just like, yeah, okay, but I mean, at the end of the day, your schedule is what it is. I mean,
Right.
sure, maybe you tried to get a game here and there, but there's always stories behind the scenes, like people say, oh, well, nobody will play us, and then you go and talk to these other teams and they're like, no, we wanted to play them, but they wanted a 2-for-1. What I
Right.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know that happens all the time, and that's what I've heard.
Right.
Like, that was the argument with Houston. Well, they really tried, and I'm like, they're Houston, man. They ought to be able to play. I don't think people are just turning them down left and right.
Tim, by the way, so here's where, and I know you guys, here's where I get frustrated with the bracketology stuff sometimes. And you guys, I give bracketologists credit because you look at it without really a biased lens, and you just look at the metrics and you try to figure out this is what it's important to the committee. But to somebody like myself, like I look at Wisconsin, the fact that we're still even considering Wisconsin is crazy to me. You can't finish tied for 11th in the Big Ten and have a play-in game as a 12 seed with 13 losses and expect to get in. I mean, so they're going to have 14 losses by the time. I mean, I don't know. That's one that just drives me crazy.
I got to tell you, we probably had more discussion about when it got to really close. They're like, okay, shirt skins, who wins here? I mean, that kind of stuff. We did try and throw a little bit about it, just because, like Brad was kind of talking about, the committee does watch a ton of games. And
right.
There's no question that they go in, like he was talking about Rutgers. They're going to go into that room on Wednesday and go, whew, did you see that performance? I mean, they're picking up the joint. So, same way with Providence, I got to hand it to those guys. They kind of steered me right at Providence a little bit. But I mean, I was shocked that was their only 3 wins. Those 3 against UConn, Marquette, Creighton, and 2 of those were overtime. I mean, they're just living on the edge, just like they were last year.
Yeah, but, I mean, a team like Wisconsin to me is just hanging on to dear life because they beat Marquette and USC in non-conference. But I'm sure there's a lot of other examples like that. Rutgers was probably one they're hanging on for dear life just because of the Purdue win at Purdue.
Wisconsin's hanging on for dear life. I mean, they were down to Minnesota. That would have been the coup de grace if they lost to Minnesota.
Yeah.
So let's see what they do. We're sponsored by Equitable Bank. We take banking personally, and West Pacific Dental Group and Infusion Brewery. Ross, first, we haven't had your thoughts on the DePaul game.
Oh, I don't have a ton of thoughts. To be honest, like I wasn't able to watch much of the game. I watched a little bit of the second half. I saw Trey get hot. Yeah, let him back in a little bit with the run there in the second half. But DePaul, for the uninitiated, DePaul is capable of that. They are talented, despite the fact that they take some crazy shots and don't have a ton of discipline. They've got some talented guys. Good to get out of there. I heard from a few people that were in attendance that it was a very pro Creighton crowd.
You could hear you could hear the CU chant loud and clear through the.
Which it usually, when I lived in Chicago and we would go to that game every year, it was always on a weekday. And so I've always wondered what it would be like on a Saturday game, and it sounds like it was very pro Creighton. Which at this stage of the year, DePaul's got 3 conference wins or whatever. It's expected to be that way. But
I mean, there were Creighton fans in the front row. A lot of them. So it was pretty cool. Nemhard's brother was there.
Oh,
they
sure.
Played the Bulls.
Yeah.
They played the Bulls the next day. So
yeah. Good to get out there though, and get a relatively stress-free win, I suppose. And Providence obviously gave us a little bit of a gift there. I could not believe the outcome of that game. I had Providence minus 7.5. I mean, that's the good thing about those games is 10, 15 minutes into the game, you can just say, all right, well, at least I don't need to sweat this. I can move on to something else. So, yeah.
You mentioned DePaul. That's them all season. They've had that 5-6 minute where they look like world beaters, and then they just fade away. And that's exactly what they did with Creighton. They cut it to 5. We were up 18. They cut it to 5. Mac took a timeout. Nemhard hits a big three, and then that just, you could just almost see their shoulders slump and go, okay, now we're down 8 again, and
I'll be honest. I was shifting gears a little bit. I know we briefly touched on awards at the beginning. I was a
yeah,
little.
we'll get to it. Let's go to it right now. Sure.
Well, I was a little bit surprised that Kalk actually got Defensive Player of the Year.
I was too, frankly.
I thought there were a few other guys that you could have made a case for, and
Carter.
Yeah, Devin Carter is certainly one of them. Probably the main one that stands out for Providence. But I'm glad for Ryan. I mean, two-time back-to-back, Big East Defensive Player of the Year awards is a heck of an accomplishment. So happy for him, and obviously he gets first team All Big East as well. And he's a huge part of what we do. I think they haven't come out with Big East Player of the Year yet. I think everybody expects it to be Kolek. It should be Kolek. It would be silly to name anybody but him at this point.
Right. And for the first time ever, I think we had 3 guys. We had 2 on the honorable mention team, Baylor and Trey. Kevin McNamara was texting me Saturday. And he's like, hey, of these 3, how would you break them down? The 3. And I go, God, it's tough, Kevin. I mean, Creighton plays they're a better team with Kalk, right? And when he plays well, they're a better team. Trey's the most consistent guy, and probably you could say the guy they really wouldn't want to ever lose and hard to replace would be Baylor. So you've got 3 dynamic players there, and I'm glad.
It's crazy we don't, and you don't even mention Nemhard, and you can make a case Nemhard would be the toughest guy to lose. Sure. I mean, it's just the interesting thing about our team, and I think where everybody's like so. The range, the spectrum of this Jays team has been so crazy this year is because you look at our starting 5 and you say, when was a game that our starting 5 played really, really well, all 5 of them? And I don't know that you can really count on one hand the amount of games that all 5 of those guys played really well in a game. And the potential is there. I mean, when those 5 if they can get it together, Tim, and get clicking, I just don't see a ton of teams in the country being able to beat them in a couple of weeks.
No, I agree with you. It's going to be really, really interesting. But a lot of brackets you're seeing: Creighton 6, Gonzaga 3. I would like to see Timmy and Kalk against each other.
Yeah, that would be a fun battle. Timmy he's a heck of a player to watch. Obviously that's as skilled of a big that we've seen at that level in a long, long time. But I'm looking at some of these seed lines here, and I guess let me ask you this: getting away from the seed lines, if you're strictly a Creighton fan, as much hoops as you've watched and look at and etc., are there any teams, and if it's a couple, that you look at across the entire country where you're like, I'm scared to play them? I don't think we'd fare well against them, because I don't really see it.
Everybody says Houston just because of their style. They can.
Right.
The thing I notice when teams play Houston is they get 10 points down, game's over.
Right.
Like Memphis hung with them, then that's a game all the way through, and it's a bounce of the ball one way or the other. You get up down 10 on Houston, you ain't coming back.
And Memphis was down 9 at half, and they
hung in there,
come out, and they hung around.
Yep. And so that's huge there. No, I see your point.
I think you have. I think is your bracket a few days old? I think.
Well, no, the one I posted today was the one from the mock selection committee. So I'm posting a new one, my own, on Wednesday, and I'll have certainly a few tweaks in there that I would differ with how we went.
I would assume you're going to put UCLA in front of Purdue, or no?
Look, we talked about that a lot. In a way, I kind of feel bad for UCLA because they've done everything they could have done, right? They won the Pac-12. They beat Arizona. It's a split. You just look at their resume, and it's pretty thin compared to the other teams up there. I mean, it looks more like Houston's than it does like anybody else's.
Yeah.
And that's Houston's grind. If Houston had a little better resume, they'd be number one. It wouldn't even be a question. So That's the problem. I'm going to have to see. They would have to really move. I see Joe Lenardi move them up today to the last four. And Purdue just hasn't played well. There's no question about it. I just have to see a little bit more going on here. Something slipping in Purdue and maybe UCLA at least getting to the finals.
Yeah.
I do think there'll be
is
such
probably,
a huge Arizona fan base will be down there for their tourney. It's gonna be like a home game for them. And now they've got motivation just losing. I'm not they scare me just because of the way they look. They're just so damn big. But when you see them certain nights, like UCLA, they just kind of like you never ever thought they were ever going to get in that game, you know. And UCLA's had some kind of played down to competition sometimes.
yeah.
Kansas State, when they look great, they look great. But yeah,
Same with Kansas. When I think Kansas, when Kansas looks really good, I think they're really good. But I've watched them other times, and I'm like, and I'm kind of shaking my head, like you guys should be.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything blown away by Kansas. You know what I mean? Like
right.
The other team, I would say probably, if I was scared of one team, like, and I know we would never play them, but I mean, UConn, the way they're going right now, they can beat anybody. I mean, they've got the pieces, man. They've got a bench. They've got tons of backup size. They're just,
I agree, especially if Hawkins is really going and then Sanogo's in a groove, and I'm with you. I think UConn's a really dangerous team. I think the best bang for your buck. I think UCLA is probably the best team I've watched when they're clicking. But again, you look at these top teams, then I just don't think Alabama is really good when they've got everything going. I just don't know, Tim, if they can overcome all the Brandon Miller stuff, because
they're clearly not.
It's only going to get louder as over the next couple of weeks. It's only going to become more amplified. It's just I just don't see it happening. But
here's the interesting part we talked about though was that all said that there's no dominant team and it's all even. Several of us said, man, I can never remember a year where the 1, 2, and 3 are so close. Like most years lately, the last 5 years, it's been you could blindfold right in the top seeds.
Right,
they were just locked in. This year, it's not that way, and it's exciting that way, I guess. But
let me ask you: is there a potential double-digit seed? So somebody's 10 and higher that you think could make a Final Four run potentially?
Well, I know when we put this bracket together, we were blown away by the 12s. like, wow, there's a lot of 12s in there that are going to give teams problems.
Drake, D-Rock, and
Drake, Oral Roberts, obviously.
How about Iona? Iona's healthy and really clicking.
Yeah,
I think
they were been on the weakest end, but yeah. I don't know where they'll fall. Well, no, I wouldn't say Final Four, but I mean, West Virginia could win a few games in the tournament. They could, if they get in the right region, they could knock off a number one. Like they won't be like if they got with Houston, they won't be intimidated with that physical style. You know what I mean? Like Huggins kind of leans into that. So that, I don't really see anybody. Honestly, it's hard to say right now after their last 2 games. But if Providence got their act together, when they're clicking on all cylinders, they're pretty darn good.
I agree with you. I totally agree.
But gosh, you got to wonder what's going on there. To lay an egg like that, it's just incredible on senior day when they had a bunch of seniors. It's like, whoa.
Tim, we got your St. Thomas Tommies up 2 at half on Oral Roberts.
Wow. I'm telling you what, you better get them now, kids, because when they get their arena built and they get going,
they're going to get going. Oh yeah,
they got tons of money. They got tons of money, man. They're gonna really get going. Okay, so anyway, we talked about that. So here, call me crazy. First of all, everybody in the country saying, "Oh, Villanova's going to win the Big East. Villanova's going to win the Big East." I kept telling everybody, "Go, just need to slow your roll a little bit here. I don't think you realize that they're not your mama and daddy's Villanova." And then I said, "Just watch this weekend, and then UConn went in there and handled them pretty easy." Now it's UConn, okay, but I think that kind of tamped down all the Villanova fever.
I think if they can get past, if they can beat us, I think they're for sure going to get to the title game.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't think Xavier without it's especially on Friday in New York, with that crowd being so pro Villanova, Xavier without a Fremantle is not going to beat them. Now Seton Hall with a number of a relatively be more of a neutral site. If they do get Seton Hall in that semifinal game, and Seton Hall does have some tough physical guys, I could see Seton Hall giving them a game. I can't see Xavier. I'm off the Xavier train without Fremantle, if you can't tell.
Well, I'll say this though, that Xavier struggles when they get a true big against them. They can have, when they don't have to have it, they've got a guy that can come out and guard Dixon out there,
Yep.
So that helps them a little bit. I don't know that they have an answer for Boom, unless you answer on the other end with, more. But
Yeah.
I said something crazy, and I hope I don't know. This is crazy. But now that Villanova lost, okay, so now they're like a little bit shoulders down. They got to play Wednesday night. There's going to be nobody in there because the Seton Halls and St. John's fans will all have left. It'll be a late night Wednesday game. And if Georgetown just comes out and says,
"Oh, don't," I know where you're going.
That they just come out and say, "You know what? We're just going to let it go tonight. We have nothing to lose. This could be Patrick's last game. We're just going to go." And Villanova doesn't come out ready because there has been games where Villanova hasn't come ready to play early on without more, granted, but I'm just saying.
Tim, that's not a crazy thought on your end, and I'm not anti, and I would actually almost agree with you if I didn't think that Georgetown is so beyond checked out that they just want to go home.
That's a problem. That's a problem. I don't know that, even when we beat them by 40, though, I don't know that they checked out. We just played really well, and they just didn't come out with the intensity that they needed to in that game, and they got down 25 right off the get-go, and it was over. I don't know. We'll see. It's a long shot. Don't get me wrong. It's a real long shot.
But they've got the talent. But your point stands in the fact that they've got the talent to do so. I don't think they have Wahab anymore, though, do they?
Did he leave totally? I know he didn't play the last game.
Yeah, I think he's on like a leave of absence, or he just left the team or something. So
yeah, that's a big piece they're missing. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I just love Saturday and even the Georgetown game, but I just love Saturday. We started going inside more, played more inside outside. That really helped our cause. And I think it's huge too that we've had two games now where those guys have been off their feet quite a bit. Baylor got a good rest Saturday night. Nemhard got some minutes on the bench. I mean, Nemhard looked, man, Saturday night. I don't know if it was just me. Zach, maybe you can comment, but man, he would look jet quick Saturday night. Holy cow.
He did, and especially with the way that his shot has looked for about the past 3 weeks.
Yeah, he's been shooting it much better.
He's been able to go around that high pick and roll and hit that three from the top pretty consistently, which is a huge boon for him and the entire offense as a whole if he can knock down that shot, because then if people are playing him on that, he is lightning quick. And then if he gets that pump fake off or, they think he's going to shoot that, he just goes around him. That opens up so much because the lob to Kalkbrenner hasn't been there nearly as much. But if he's hitting that shot, that opens up either him getting to the basket or that lob to Kalkbrenner on the roll.
Real quick, so I don't forget before we wrap this up. So the women had another tough loss last night. Jesus. They had a tip in to win the night before and then 2-point loss last night to Villanova, who's really good. Villanova's really good. Yeah. I don't think that's going to hurt them enough to, they should be fine for the NCAA tournament. And I really like what they could do in the tournament. Creighton baseball lost 2 of 3 this weekend, so they've dropped 1 game below 500. By the way, the Omaha game that was supposed to be played over in Omaha. I think tomorrow has been canceled. They pushed that back a couple weeks, or no, a month. I mean, so yeah, I don't know why they scheduled a game here first week of May, but so be it. So that's where we sit there. Just to get you set, so we'll be the late game on Thursday, so that'll be like about an 8:45 tip, and we'll be on right after 11 o'clock to take your thoughts on the game and hopefully preview a gigantic match against Xavier. Now, do you think Xavier's got Seton Hall potentially, right?
But Xavier plays.
Potentially they have
yes.
Seton Hall.
Seton Hall plays
DePaul.
DePaul. Yes.
Yeah.
That's why I said, yeah, I was just assuming when we were going through scenarios about Villanova in the semis, I was just assuming Seton Hall was going to be the team that Xavier played. I guess it's possible DePaul could beat them, but
is there a report on Richmond? Like, how long?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the deal is there.
Well, they're playing great without him.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So Wednesday night to kind of get a taste of what's going on. I think it's a 2:00 start Wednesday. So get those TVs on at work. The first game is the game. I think that should be at night, but I know why they're doing it because they got to turn around and play at noon the next day, and that's St. John's and Butler. I think it'll be a pretty good matchup.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and then it'll be followed by Seton Hall, DePaul, and then they can have 5 viewers nationally for that Villanova Georgetown game if that gets out of hand. It's probably not the people be flicking to find the Big Ten real quick.
Yeah.
But anyway, thanks for joining us. Thanks for Brad for jumping in. Great talking to him. I'm sure we'll have him on many more times. So rest up. You taking any time off this week, buddy?
No, I'm in Kansas City for work. And so I'm gonna go to the play-in game Wednesday night, Big 12.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. You can get in the door for like $5. It's great.
Who's really?
Yeah.
Well, who's playing in that? It's a Texas Tech. West Virginia's down there, right?
The late game on 8:30 on Wednesday is Oklahoma State. I think the game before that is West Virginia, Texas Tech.
Wow, those are big games.
Yeah, that's what we got.
God, what do you think about Mark Adams, huh?
Yeah, I'm not even really sure what exactly happened. He quoted a Bible verse or something.
Yeah, but it was about slaves and masters, and that slaves need to bow down to their masters.
I think my understanding from the interwebs is that he had a couple strikes against him.
Yes.
Anyways, in the sense that players did not like him in the way that he coached, and so he's out.
Yeah. I talked to him a couple of times in Maui. Kind of a strange cat.
Yeah.
He's.
I can imagine.
He's not what you think. You look at him, it's like.
Right.
Yeah, he's very religious man. You could tell that just talking to him.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And I was told by a big time alum at Texas Tech that I ran into that said that his brother was a huge farmer in Texas, in that part of Texas.
Okay.
Enormously huge farmer, died of COVID during the COVID thing.
Oh, wow.
And that really affected him because they were very, very close. So,
wow.
But yeah, he seemed, it was weird. Seemed almost like last year. It was kind of weird, right? Like last year, it seemed like the team really played for him more than even Beard. Like they enjoyed playing for him. And this year, it seemed like the team didn't enjoy playing for him. So I don't know I know he was frustrated right off the get-go, even Maui, frustrated with, he's a defensive guy. He was very frustrated with their defense. And that's when the famous line came when he goes, yeah, I might even go play man-to-man. And Schulman then was moderating the thing and turns to Mac, and Mac goes, see that ocean behind me? That ocean will freeze over before he plays man-to-man.
Yeah.
So, anyway, weird stuff going on. Hearing some McCafferty to Notre Dame rumors. Although that's not new news.
I don't see that happening, but
Yeah, I do. He's a big Notre Dame guy. Yeah, he'd always wanted to go to Notre Dame. He's starting to wear out his welcome, I think, in Iowa City.
yeah, I don't know that
That stare down is still
would
not
he-
sitting well with
he
people.
would be that good of a hire, I don't think.
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know, but
I think a place like Notre Dame should hire a guy like D-Rock before they hire Fran.
D-Rock would be great at Notre Dame.
Yeah. Yep. That he
Yeah,
would.
that would work out nice. Maybe Tucker didn't like South Bend and he'd rather go a little bit west from where he lives now. Sure looked good this weekend, baby.
Yes, they did. Good. Awful good team.
All right. So, we'll be back with you about 11:15 on Thursday night to break down the Creighton game and either look ahead to the matchup with potentially Xavier or look ahead where we're going to land the NCAA tournament. Thanks for joining us.